Before I begin, I'd like to give praises to the Most High Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rahakodesh. This lesson is on the reckoning of the Lord in Asheville, North Carolina. It's also upon the Edomite 13 colonies and the symbolism in the destruction of Asheville, North Carolina. Because there's a reason why this has happened. First, we're going to get the definition of reckoning. It's a noun, and one of its meaning, and the meaning we're applying here, is the avenging or punishing of past mistakes or misdeeds. And a sample sentence is the fear of being brought to reckoning. And that's what all of these Gentiles have. A fear of being brought to reckoning. As long as they're in a high position, they think that everything is good, that the Lord is blessing them, but the Lord is not blessing them. The Lord has actually been blessing the Israelites to some degree by having these Gentile nations in high positions because of our downfall. But in all these nations, we were taken care of by those nations. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the revived Roman Empire today, which is Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, the daughter of Babylon, the United Snakes of America. It is a worldwide system that the Lord is bearing his reckoning upon all around the world. You can't just concentrate on things happening in this country. You have to concentrate on what's happening globally with wildfires, storms, and on the other side of the world, they don't call them hurricanes. On this side, it's hurricanes. Over there, it's typhoons. The same thing is happening, and even in the Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean Sea, there are storms that are, whatever they call them over there, they're what we call hurricanes over here. And this hurricane is not a mistake. It is the judgment of the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai. All judgment is given into the hand of the Son. It is the Son, Yahushai, who is passing this judgment. So let's go ahead and get into it. We need to look at the connection between the scriptures about the reckoning upon the Gentiles and what is going on in the United Snakes of America, specifically the symbolism in the destruction of Asheville, North Carolina. So let's begin. On a site within the state, they have a history of the city of Asheville, North Carolina. This article is entitled Entwined with Slavery, A Brief Local History. And it's brief enough to let you know the severity of the things that were done upon our people. That you have to understand that when you look at what they're going to say here.
Entwined with Slavery, A Brief Local History. By 𝐚𝐬𝐿, June 30, 2020. Pictured is John Haywood. By 1860, about 15% of the population of western North Carolina was enslaved. Only a small percentage of the white settlers who had pushed out indigenous Native Americans owned slaves, about 2% of households, according to Catherine Calhoun Cutshall, collections manager, North Carolina Room, Pack Memorial Library, and of those, most owned one or two. The majority were owned by a handful of elite families, whose names are commemorated throughout the region. They used their wealth and influence to help build Asheville and surrounding communities, supporting government, schools, healthcare, infrastructure, parks and other civic improvements, for which they were honored. But the wealth that lifted them to prominence was derived in large part by the enslavement and exploitation of black people, entwining their many good deeds with the evil of racism. But the wealth that lifted them to prominence was derived in large part by the enslavement and exploitation of black people, entwining their many good deeds with the evil of racism. Asheville. Originally Morristown, the town was incorporated and renamed in 1797 to honor Samuel Ash, 1725 to 1813, governor of North Carolina and a major slave owner. He never lived here. Ashland Avenue is also named for him. The Patton family constituted the largest slaveholders in Asheville, collectively owning more than 220. James W. Patton, 1803 to 1861, owned 78 in 1860 and was, with J.E. Patton and others, active in buying, selling, and trading hundreds of enslaved blacks. With J.E. Patton and others, active in buying, selling, and trading hundreds of enslaved blacks. Patton Avenue is named for him. John Patton and Samuel Chun were partners in a slave trading business. Chun has a road and a neighborhood named for him. The following solicitation reads: Negroes wanted. We want to buy from 100 to 500 likely Negroes, from whom we will pay the highest cash prices. Negroes wanted. We want to buy from 100 to 500 likely Negroes, from whom we will pay the highest cash prices. Solicitation made by Chun and Patton, from Asheville, North Carolina on February 10, 1859. Asheville businessman and hotelkeeper James McConnell Smith, 1787 to 1856, owned 75 enslaved blacks, some of whom built the Smith McDowell House, believed to be Asheville's oldest surviving structure. It is now headquarters of the Western North Carolina Heritage Center. William McDowell owned 40 slaves. Daniel Reynolds, 1809 to 1878, namesake of Reynolds Mountain, owned 15 slaves. Asheville's first merchants, brothers Zebulon and Bedent Baird, owned 14 slaves in 1820. The Baird family, Baird Cove Road, owned 36 slaves. Pictured are James and Polly Patton Smith. Pictured is Augustus Merrimon. Augustus Summerfield Merrimon, 1830 to 1892, U.S. Senator and Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, wrote, "Slavery has certainly existed from the earliest times down to the present, and it would seem that it is, in one sense, of divine appointment. I am thoroughly convinced that slavery in this country cannot be abolished without greatly endangering our country. If it is an evil in the abstract, it would be a greater evil to abolish it here." Merrimon Avenue is named for him. Asheville's hotel and tourism industry, already thriving before the Civil War, was in large part based on slave labor. Asheville's hotel and tourism industry, already thriving before the Civil War, was in large part based on slave labor. Here is an interesting admission and link to the destructive slave history of the city Asheville, North Carolina, in link entitled, Story, What's in a Name? For Asheville, signs point to history of racism. Buncombe County. Originally the state of Buncombe, which encompassed much of western North Carolina, it was named after Colonel Edward Buncombe, 1742 to 1778, who forced more than 100 enslaved Africans to work his sugar plantations. In the 1860 census, the black population of Buncombe County was 13%, but historians note the percentage swelled in summer months as slaveholders in Georgia and South Carolina temporarily moved their families to mountain resorts. In 1860, Zebulon Vance owned 6 blacks, his brother owned 7. William Johnston, a farmer, owned 55 slaves. Weaverville. In 1860, U.S. Census data show that the families of Michael Montreville Weaver and his wife Jane Eliza Baird Weaver, who donated the land of what is today Weaverville, collectively owned 93 enslaved people. Pictured is Jane Weaver. Woodfin. The town was named for Nicholas W. Woodfin, 1810 to 1876, a complicated man who was at best inconsistent in the application of his values, according to the Town of Woodfin Facebook page. By 1860, Woodfin was western North Carolina's second largest individual slaveholder, owning 122 enslaved people. Only William F. McKesson in Burke County personally owned more, 174. Madison County. Originally inhabited by the Cherokee people, Madison County was named for James Madison, 1751–1836, fourth President of the United States, who owned more than 100 slaves on his Virginia plantation and sold them for personal profit. The black population of Madison County in 1860 was 3.6%. According to a September 2, 1903, article in the Lawrence, Essay, Advertiser, African Americans were not allowed to live in Madison County except within a mile of the courthouse in Marshall. The construction of Mars Hill College in Madison County was financed in part by using an enslaved black man, Joseph Anderson, as collateral for the loan. The construction of Mars Hill College in Madison County was financed in part by using an enslaved black man, Joseph Anderson, as collateral for the loan. A contractor seized Joe, and the sheriff jailed him until the school's trustees paid the debt. Joe was freed after the Civil War. His great-granddaughter, Aureline Anderson Simmons, in 1961 became the first African-American student at Mars Hill College and is now a noted civil rights leader and activist in Asheville. Henderson County. Leonard Henderson, 1772–1833, one of the first Chief Justices of North Carolina, owned 41 slaves in 1830, according to the census. As Chief Justice, Henderson argued that local Quakers had no legal right to grant freedom to enslaved workers left to them in a man's will, citing the mischief it might cause if enslaved blacks saw free blacks getting paid for their work. As Chief Justice, Henderson argued that local Quakers had no legal right to grant freedom to enslaved workers left to them in a man's will, citing the mischief it might cause if enslaved blacks saw free blacks getting paid for their work. Numerous collections of slaves, Henderson wrote, working for their own benefit, in the view and under the continual observation of others who are compelled to labor for their owners, would naturally excite in the latter discontent with their condition, encourage idleness and disobedience, and lead possibly in the course of human events to the most calamitous of all contests, a bellum serval, slave war. By 1860, the black population of Henderson County was 15%. Picture is Leonard Henderson. Yancey County. In the 1820 census, Bartlett Yancey, U.S. Congressman and Speaker of the North Carolina State Senate, is recorded as owning 36 slaves. In the Yancey family Bible, he recorded the family record of the age of Negro children born to his slaves. There are 131 births listed from 1810 to 1864. In the Yancey family Bible, he recorded the family record of the age of Negro children born to his slaves. There are 131 births listed from 1810 to 1864. Haywood County. Named for John Haywood, state treasurer for 40 years. After his death in 1827, auditors discovered $68,906.80 missing, equivalent to $1.86 million in 2020 dollars. His enslaved blacks were sold to partially reimburse the state. His namesake county, however, had relatively few enslaved people in 1860. The exception was James Robert Love, proprietor of the White Sulphur Springs Resort near Waynesville, who owned 85 servants. Pictured is John Haywood. From the comments about this site, there is more.
Ariel Lauren Wilson responded on June 30th, 2020 at 5:15 p.m. Hi AVL Watchdog. First off, thank you. I'm from Bakersville in Mitchell County, where in-depth regional, much less local, reporting has been virtually non-existent. As a former freelance journalist, your newsroom gives me hope. That said, I was disappointed to see Entwined with Slavery, a brief local history, stop short of mentioning Elisha Mitchell, the namesake of Mitchell County and a slaveholder. Even a simple online search of Elisha Mitchell plus slavery reveals the starting point from UNC Chapel Hill, where he was a professor, the university's own wrestling with its Confederate and slave-exploiting history is another, likely separate layer. Seeing that Yancey County was mentioned, Mount Mitchell, also named after Elisha and the tallest peak in the entire Appalachian Range, could have been an important landmark to include, too. I understand that Asheville and Buncombe County are the main scope of AVL Watchdog's work given the title and mission. I also understand that writing about slavery in general is essentially limitless. Even still, I encourage AVL Watchdog writers and editors to expand their view of the region, and especially to counties that are overlooked and underserved by almost every measure. Considering Western North Carolina and its history as a whole could provide deeper context for understanding and telling the story of the region's largest city. Thank you for your time, attention, and reporting. I look forward to following AVL Watchdog's work.
Peter H. Lewis responded on July 1, 2020 at 9:39 a.m. Thank you for your letter, and you're right, it was an oversight not to include Elisha Mitchell, Mitchell County, Mount Mitchell, Elisha Mitchell Audubon Society, in the admittedly incomplete catalog of local slaveholders, white supremacists, and racists for whom local landmarks are named. The Reverend Mitchell, 1793 to 1857, qualifies on all three counts. Educated at Yale, Mitchell was a professor of chemistry and geology at the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, where he first acquired a slave. He was also an ordained Presbyterian minister and once preached that the New Testament justified slavery, and that owning black people was morally no different than owning land or cattle. Writing in 1848, Mitchell defended slavery as beneficial for African Americans because they were a race of inferior moral and mental endowments. AVL Watchdog regrets the error of omission. P.S. Mitchell's name is honored by the Elisha Mitchell Audubon Society in Asheville. John James Audubon, 1785 to 1851, son of a slave trader in Haiti, himself owned at least 9 enslaved people.
You see, the Lord is making their tongues to fall upon themselves with articles like this, as well as some of the other things that we're going to take a look at here today. You're going to see the evidence of the reckoning of the Lord with these Gentiles. And if you have spiritual eyes to see and spiritual ears to hear, you will understand. You see, these Ashevilleans are proud of their history of violence and domination. They have no repentance for it. So this is more damning evidence against these Ashevilleans. This is probably the most prominent family since it is the first mentioned. It was done on the Patton family history. We read, as part of local commemoration of the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, the Center for Diversity Education at UNC Asheville worked with the Buncombe County Register of Deeds to provide accessibility to slave deeds, the sale of slaves, the recording of the sale of our people. For more information, please go to, and there's the link. Now, the starting point, it says in 1860, the U.S. Census data shows that many of the most influential families of Buncombe County owned slaves. All of the influential families, which means all of the wealthy families, because just like it is today, the most influential people in the world are those who have money. And they are no more special, no more important than anyone else. So it goes on to say 221 slaves owned by members of the Patton family. 176 slaves were owned by members of the Woodfin family. 18 slaves owned by members of the Vance family. 37 slaves owned by members of the Weaver family. 67 slaves owned by members of the Gudger family. 56 slaves owned by members of the Baird family. In the following exhibit, three generations of the Patton family living before and after the Civil War illustrate this regrettable but undeniable part of Buncombe County history. Now moving on to slide 2, you see a map of an area where evidently the Patton family resided. And the third slide we see, this is a picture of this Edomite, James Patton, born in County Derry, Ireland. James Patton immigrated to the United States in 1783. You see, these people came here. They are not the indigenous people. First as a laborer and then as a traveling peddler, he overcame poverty, illness, and the treachery of associates to earn wealth and power. Slide 4. This is concerning the biography of James Patton. In the biography of James Patton, one of the first residents of Asheville, North Carolina, you see they changed the way they spelled it, same city. Patton describes his struggles and final success. He wrote, quote, "With all the trials and misfortunes that have come my way, I never desponded. I always looked onwards and suffered nothing to arrest my progress. If I met with troubles, I consoled myself with the reflection that it was the common lot of man and endeavored to profit by it in the future. The little success I have had in life was owing to industry and frugality." This was republished in 1891 by James Patton's grandson, Thomas Walton Patton. And this is why I'm saying these people are proud. They are absolutely proud of their violence and domination. Slide number 5. James Patton came to Asheville in 1814 and opened Asheville's second inn, the Eagle Hotel. Now that's Esau, Edom the eagle, Rome the eagle, and everywhere Edomites are, all these Europeans, the symbol is the eagle. After the construction of the Buncombe Turnpike in 1828, Patton expanded his resort interest by building with his sons. See, they joined, the next generation joined in their wickedness, a 350-room hotel in the town of Warm Springs, later renamed Hot Springs in Madison County. And you see there a picture of that particular facility. Slide number 6. James Patton's wealth included slaves. In his will, he left slaves and their future increase to his son James Washington Patton. Now this is some wicked shit here. "I further give and bequeath to my son James W. Patton the following male slaves, to wit, Bob, Sam, Leop, Hardin, Felix, Austin, Peter, Anthony, John, and Russell, and the following female slaves, the childbearing ones, to wit, Celia, Rhoda, and her 5 children, and the future increase of the females." You see, this is the wickedness. This is the wickedness. And this is why there's a reckoning upon these families, these generations of families. Slide number 7. This is James Washington Patton, a prominent merchant and contractor. Patton used his social position and wealth as a power for good in the community, to good of the Edomites, not to the good of any so-called black person. To increase commerce, he built Patton Avenue. Well, that, you see, and named after him. You see, because this is what the Lord says, that they name the lands after themselves. Not only do they name the lands after themselves, They named streets today, not today, but for decades, if not centuries, after themselves. The first major east-west road in Asheville. From his father, he inherited the hotel in Warm Springs and the Eagle Hotel, where the Fine Arts Theater is today. Okay, the slide number 8. Before the Civil War, James W. Patton was one of the largest slaveholders in Buncombe County. In 1860, the U.S. Census slave schedules show Patton owning 78 slaves. And who knows how many he had off record? Who knows? Many of them worked at the Eagle Hotel. Imagine that, doing that today. And lived behind the hotel in an area that continued to be a black neighborhood until urban renewal around 1970. We're talking from the 1860s to the 1970s. That's over 100 years. 100 years. Slide number 9. Around 1857, James W. Patton built an imposing new home at 78 Biltmore Avenue, the first Asheville residence with indoor plumbing. The Henrietta, named for Patton's second wife, Henrietta Kerr Patton, stood about where the French Broad Co-op does today. Patton died in the first year of the Civil War. 2 sons by his first marriage died of disease while serving in the Confederate Army. His youngest son, Thomas Walton Patton, survived the war and found himself head of the family, struggling to adapt to a totally new world. And all praise to the Most High for that, getting rid of some of these devils. Slide number 10. Thomas Walton Patton, the next generation, obviously. In the spirit of his grandfather and father, Thomas Patton was known for service to his community. To which community? To the community of the Edomites. He and his sister, Fanny, helped found Mission Hospital and donated land for the first library building in Asheville. St. Matthias Episcopal Church began as Trinity Chapel in 1867 on land donated by Captain Thomas Patton. So he was also in the military. That's what that's telling you. He was in the military. Slide number 11, the last one. The lower left corner of this 1891 Sanborn map shows James W. Patton's former slave quarters, now labeled Negro tenements. Former slave Isaac Dixon bought land there from Thomas Walton Patton, and the area became known as Dixon Town. Later, the neighborhood was known as East End. Okay, so what we see is the time of the Gentiles is being fulfilled, and it's been going on since approximately 728 BC, when the Israelites were taken out of the northern kingdom. And then in about 586 BC for the southern kingdom of Yisrael with other Gentiles. And then we advance all the way to today, and we see the wickedness of the Gentiles has gotten greater and greater and greater, obviously because the things that are available to operate in sin today didn't exist 50 years ago, 60 years ago. You have television, you have radio, you have the internet, you have print magazines, you have digital media, you have digital social media. All of these things are a pathway to sin, and only the wise stay away from it and stay away from the sin. So let's get into some scriptures. What does this? This is Job chapter 27, 19 to 23. The rich man shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes, and he is not. Terrors, meaning destruction, calamity, and a dreadful event, take hold on him as waters. A tempest stealeth him away in the night. What is that tempest? A storm wind, a whirlwind. And what does it do? It terminates, it consumes, to have an end and perish. Verse 21, the east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place. And what is that east wind? The east wind in the Bible always means destruction. So the east wind carries him away and he departed. He's dead. And what is that? What is the definition of that storm? And as a storm hurleth, that is to storm away, that is of the Most High's action against the wicked in a figurative sense. This is what that word means. Verse 22. For the Most High shall cast upon him and not spare. You see, the Lord has not spared. It's judgment time. It's judgment upon our, it's been judgment for over 2,700 years upon the Israelites, and now these Gentiles are getting their judgment. This has been going on for a while, and now it's just getting like the birthing pains, like the scripture says, it's getting worse and worse and worse. Events are coming closer and closer together. What they call climate change is the judgment of the Lord 𝐜𝐴H𝐻𝐵. He would fain flee, that is, he would flee suddenly or chase away or drive away out of his hand. But he can't escape, you see. He cannot escape the judgment of the Lord. Verse 23, men shall clap their hands at him, at the Lord that is, and shall hiss him out of his place. Or they're going to, hiss means as a call or in scorn. You see, a lot of these people, they'll say that God protect them for the ones that survive, but they don't understand that it is the Lord, Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yahushua, B'Hashem HaKodesh, that is one doing the punishment. He's the one that took away their homes. He's the one that caused the landslides. He's the one that caused the floods. He's the one that caused the hurricane to cause all of this devastation. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Israelites. So what does this? Tornadoes, hurricanes that are also known in the Bible as tempests, storms, and whirlwinds. That's what does this. And we're going to get more proof on it from the scriptures. Ecclesiastes chapter 39, verse 28 to 30. You see, you have to understand these things biblically. This is why we're here to instruct the world of the Israelites and the Gentiles to let them know their punishment. There be spirits that are created for vengeance. Created by who? The Lord Yahweh, B'Hashem Yahushua, B'Hashem HaKodesh, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force, like the force of a hurricane, the force of a flood, and like the force of a tornado, and appease the wrath of him that made them. Fire and hail and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance. That's why you see it happening all around the world, especially where the Gentiles are that had our people in captivity. Verse 30. Teeth of wild beasts and scorpions, serpents, and the sword, meaning weapons, punishing the wicked to destruction, to their death. They shall rejoice in his commandment, that these spirits shall rejoice in his commandment of the Lord, and they shall be ready on earth when need is. And this was when the time was needed. This was the appointed time for Asheville, North Carolina, and all of those colonial states along the East Coast. And when their time is come, they shall not transgress his word. The spirit shall not transgress the Lord's word. Not like us. The angels obey. We disobey and obey intermittently, but the angels always, the spirits, the angels always obey. Therefore, from the beginning, I was resolved and thought upon these things. This is what you all need to do, and have left them in writing. This is left to us. See, the things that are pleasing unto the Lord are left unto us, the Israelites. All the works of the Lord are good. So this devastation is good. This is how the kingdom of heaven is going to be manifested on the earth, by the destruction of all Gentile powers. And he will give every needful thing in due season. And everything, every needful thing is that we as Israelites are going to receive a host of things and things we can't even imagine. Next scripture. Ecclesiastes chapter 40, verses 9 and 10. Death and bloodshed, strife and sword, that means weapons of war and war, calamities, famine, tribulation, and the scourge. These things are created for the wicked, and for their sakes came the flood. So now you know why all of this is happening, because there's wickedness where these floods happen, where these tornadoes happen, where these hurricanes happen. There's wickedness, including the wickedness of you unrepented Israelites. Let's get some more. Isaiah 28 verse 2. Behold, the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, hath a mighty and strong one. You can't fight against these spirits. And they're trying to find, that's the reason why they're coming out with autonomous weapons. They think they're going to be able to fight against the Lord, but forget about it. They're not going to win. The Lord is lifting them up so he can show his strength to destroy them, which as a tempest of hell and a destroying storm, as a flood of mighty waters overflowing, shall cast down the earth with the hand. Now let's take a look at some of these words, which as a tempest of hell means specifically, tempest of hell means of the Most High's judgment. Okay, and a destroying storm means storm, tempest, terror, or horror. And the storm in this case means the rain shower, the thunderstorm, the flood of rain, downpour, rainstorm. Is that not what destroyed the city of the Asheville? As a flood, what is the flood? To gush as water, carry away as with a flood. That is what has happened as judgment upon the Ashevilleans in North Carolina. The Lord cast it down to the earth with the hand. Let's get some more. Luke chapter 21-24. You see, this is concerning Yahweh's prophecy of the Gentiles' domination for a period of time. Verse 24, and they, the Israelites, shall fall by the edge of the sword, that was in 70 AD, and shall be led captive into all nations. What are those nations? Nations means Gentiles and the heathen in this case. And Jerusalem, speaking of the land, and Jerusalem also speaks of the people, shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. This is how you know that the people in the land right now are not the Israelites. They are converts into the religion they call Judaism that doesn't exist in the Bible. And any ism, the original definition of ism is something negative. So Judaism, as far as I'm concerned, is negative. All religions are negative. All religions are lies. You see, judgment of the Gentiles is here. You have to understand that. Do you have spiritual eyes to see and spiritual ears to hear what thus saith the Lord? Well, if you don't, you won't understand this. If you do, you do understand this. The Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes of the Israelites is beginning the sorrows upon these Gentiles. It's that simple. That's what he's doing. We are going to be delivered out of the hand of every Gentile in the areas we're scattered around the world. So now let's take a look at a collage of destruction that we saw, and you might not have seen, but you're going to see it in these pictures upon the Ashevilleans in North Carolina.
A path of destruction in western North Carolina in the aftermath of Helene. The storm is now being compared to Hurricane Katrina, with officials calling it a disaster of biblical proportion. Officials calling it a disaster of biblical proportion. Officials calling it a disaster of biblical proportion. Residents trapped in their homes with no lights, food, or water, and few open roads for rescuers to help them.
All right, guys, just to give you an understanding of the devastation we're dealing with here. Chimney Rock's gone. Flowering Bridge is gone. And the road's gone. So I don't know what they're going to do to get us out of here, but we're going to have to figure it out. 'Cause this is crazy.
Tonight, we're speaking one-on-one with Governor Roy Cooper to learn about the recovery effort. CBS 17 Sonica Bargo joins us live with the governor from the State Emergency Operations Center. Sonica.
Maggie, Greg, yeah, we're here with Governor Roy Cooper. And Governor, I just want to get right into it. The big thing we're hearing is that a lot of communities are almost completely cut off. They don't have cell service or Wi-Fi. So are they able to contact emergency crews, and are emergency crews able to get into those areas at this point?
Yeah, this storm has brought catastrophic devastation of historic proportions to western North Carolina. Our priority has been to get people out and to get supplies in. Swiftwater rescue teams, 31 of them are on the job right now. We've had over 200 Swiftwater rescues. 911 operations are working. We know that a lot of people don't have cell phone service. We've been pushing the cell phone companies to bring in deployable assets to at least give temporary service to people. They have an agreement saying that if one of them can get up, then all of the cell phone services can use that one tower that they get up. So we're continuing to work to make sure we save lives, the number one priority. We know that that water's surrounding and a lot of people are cut off. We ask people not to drive on the flooded roads. Shelter in place. We're working to get help to you.
And you talked about supplies. I know there are a lot of supplies going by air. Can you talk more specifically about what local governments are asking for and what kind of supplies are going out to those areas?
They need food, water, mostly, particularly in the Asheville area where their water is cut off because of contamination, because the water system is broken. We have the Army Corps of Engineers coming in to help them. We're bringing in water to the shelters where we have a lot of people. There are growing numbers of people who are moving into the shelters. We're continuing to work to push the utilities to help them get in so that they can get the power back on. Obviously, that is one of the major challenges as well. There are a myriad of challenges that people there are facing. Just know that the people of North Carolina care about Western North Carolina. They're not only praying for them, but they're taking action. This Emergency Operations Center is going 24/7, coordinating assistance and help to Western North Carolina.
Does the state have the resources to continue fulfilling those supplies requests? Or are we also looking for federal aid, FEMA, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're looking for federal aid, and we expect that to come. We're already working closely with FEMA. We also have help from 19 other states right now. They've helped us with search and rescue teams, and we're working closely to make sure that we have all the supplies that we need. But the problem is getting them to people because, as you say, this flooding is still dangerous. Rivers are still rising, and even though a lot of the rain and the wind has moved out, it's still dangerous. And we're asking people don't drive through flooded water because there may not be a road under you. A lot of roads have washed out in Western North Carolina. 385 roads are closed. We want people to consider all roads closed right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Governor, for your time. As you can tell, still a lot of work to be done. And
are things starting to get better, or is it still a tragedy of biblical proportions, as we've heard?
I'm going to say we're still in a crisis mode. We really are. We have a lot of residents here who are without power, without water. They are running low on food. We need resources in our community, and we're ready. But you're looking at these images, these incredible images, devastation beyond anything we've ever seen in this city, in this county. And so they're still in recovery mode. There are places that we cannot, that our rescuers cannot reach because the roads are washed out, the bridges are washed out, and on top of that, our communications are wiped out. Most people have spotty cell phone service at best, and in some of these areas that are hard to reach, they've got nothing, and they haven't had anything since the storm on Friday. So we're still in a crisis mode. This is a very, very serious situation. And I think, we're a strong community. We're prepared for natural disasters and for major events, but this is on a scale never seen before. It is a logistical challenge for our community, to say the least.
Yeah, it's just awful.
It's a little hard. I'm watching these pictures. We're so cut off from communication, and I'm seeing some of the pictures you're showing. It's it's heartbreaking.
Right, Justin, the death toll from Hurricane Helene is rising. 102 people have now been confirmed dead, and that number will almost certainly rise. It is already the third deadliest hurricane to hit the United States in the last 50 years. The storm left a trail of destruction in at least 6 states. In North Carolina, the governor just told Kate that the storm wiped entire towns off the map.
Well, we don't have any power. We haven't had any since Friday morning. We had water, running water, but we can't drink it. And now the pressure is so low that there's no water coming out anymore, really. It's indescribable. I don't know, it just was covered in litter and trees and mud, and it's stinky, and it was all the way up the street up here. It just looks like the bottom of a river.
Look at this before and after of the beautiful little village of 𝐚𝐬𝐿. Just up the road from there, our next guest woke up early Friday to the sound of boulders smashing into the bridge outside their house. And then they watched as that bridge completely washed away. Their neighbors' homes washed away. And somehow, miraculously, they were able to escape. Tyler Covarrubias and Lizzie Brewer took that video that you are looking at right now with those raging waters. They are joining us now live and safe from South Carolina. First off, how are you two doing this morning?
We're doing all right. We're getting better. It's been really difficult, and it's hard to put into words, but PTSD is kicking in.
Lizzie, I'm curious, describe, we're looking at some of the video that you all took, and this is a photo, Lizzie, that you took of just mud everywhere where it usually would be like a front yard. Describe what you saw as you left your community.
Leaving, it was just unrecognizable when we were going around just looking to see if anybody was okay. I drive those roads all the time, and I just couldn't even picture where we were anymore. And just knowing that nobody is ever going to be able to live there, probably. Most of the people who have built their lives there aren't going to be able to finish their lives there. And it's just really horrifying. It's sad because there's still people there that are really hard to get to, and we're really worried about all the people that are still there. And that's why we want to do this, is so that hopefully this can reach the right people to really go and help, because a lot of people that still live there can't physically get out, and it is hard for any emergency personnel to get in. So we just want to be able to bring this to attention so those people that are still there can get help, because they need it so bad. They need it so bad. They're going to have to rebuild their whole entire lives, everything.
Lizzie, I heard you.
So,
Tyler, you said that PTSD is kicking in, and I know this is an area where people come, for example, to 𝐚𝐬𝐿 because it's so cute, it's so beautiful. There's only about 140 actual residents there. What are you going through now, and what help do you think you and others will need as this goes on and on and on, trying to figure out where you go next?
That's what's been running through my mind the past day, pretty much. But we're definitely gonna need therapy from this. Our brains, we physically feel it, how traumatic it was. And I feel, fuzzy. It's hard to think of words to say and put thoughts together. And it was traumatic. And I think we're gonna be affected by this for a long time, if not the rest of our lives.
Isaiah 28 verse 2, behold, the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, hath a mighty and strong one. You can't fight against these spirits. And they're trying to find, that's the reason why they're coming out autonomous weapons. They think they're going to be able to fight against the Lord, but forget about it. They're not going to win. The Lord is lifting them up so he can show his strength to destroy them, which as a tempest of hell and a destroying waters overflowing shall cast down the earth with the hand. Now let's take a look at some of these words, which as a tempest of hell means specifically, tempest of hell means of the Most High's judgment. Okay, and a destroying storm means storm, tempest, terror, or horror. And the storm in this case means the rain shower, the thunderstorm, the flood of rain, downpour, rainstorm. Is that not what destroyed this city of the Ashevilleans? As a flood, what is the flood? To gush as water, carry away as with a flood. That is what has happened as judgment upon the Ashevilleans in North Carolina. The Lord cast it down to the earth with the hand. I'll leave you in the most capable hands of the Most High Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushua.